Just by happenstance, I have a lot of female ancestors who have lived in extraordinary times. My previous historical fiction, The Bereaved, was about my third great-grandmother who had given up her children and then had them sent out on the orphan train. And her experiences were, devastating to me and really made me, look at what her life was like. And following back a few generations from her is Silence Greenleaf, Silence Marsh, who is the basis for Silence. And her life was also extraordinary. She lived in extraordinary times. And I just look at what these women went through and, how would it have been if I was there? And my writer's imagination just takes off. What was it like, to cook apples over, apple butter over an open, fire? And what was it like, to have to stuff rags in the windows because it was so cold? And all the different things that people would have to do in their time. For me, these ancestors, the women, because the men have their own struggles, and then the women are the ones that I just really feel connected to. And, mitochondrial DNA and genetic memory, I just really feel like they stand on my shoulders and I stand on their shoulders. But these women are in my blood and in my genes. And I want to tell their stories, the stories that have been forgotten and, left in the mists of history. I discovered her through ancestry, through the family trees. And then I went to Boston and I went to Hingham, where this story takes place. And I found the place where her father's house was. And I stood on the beach where she stood. And then we drove to Bolton, Massachusetts, where she and her new husband had a tavern, and I stood in front of that tavern, and then we went into the graveyard and I found her. I saw her grave and I was like, I can't believe I found you. And I just was like weeping. I was so happy to actually have found the real Silence Greenleaf, and just so happy to find her. I love her so much. I love her so much that my next book is also going to be essentially a colonial historical fiction, because I didn't want to stop writing about this time period. So I have been writing historical fiction about my ancestors, as I've been calling them, the women who have come before me. And I'm not finished telling those stories yet. I actually have a new book underway that it takes two branches of my family who probably never met, but I think should, and it's essentially the slaveholding members of the family and the Quaker members of the family, and I'm putting them in the cocktail shaker and mixing it up and see what happens when these, pro-slavery and anti-slavery, and let's see what happens in the middle. I'm very excited about it. And to be honest, it's not just that I'm trying to tell a good story, it's a way for me to kind of come to terms with the heinous sins of my forebears, the slaveholders. I've been thinking about what do I do about this for 20 years since I found out that we had slaveholding ancestors. I've really wanted to know how to address that, and I think historical fiction is the way that I can address that.